In this lesson, I'm going to analyze the chord progression and songwriting secrets of one of Brian Wilson's most sublimely creative compositions, Cabinessence, which originally appeared on 1967's ill-fated Smile album, or rather didn't appear, but they released it later on a different record. Brian co-wrote the song with his Smile collaborator, abstract lyricist and songwriter in his own right, Van Dyke Parks, and I think it is truly one of the high watermarks of the Beach Boys catalog. Cabinessence contains amazing chord progressions, a highly specific and pictorial instrumentation and arrangement that supports the American Gothic theme of the lyrics. There's amazing and creative background vocals, as usual, and a fascinating, off-the-beaten-path narrative of American history. Cabinessence is like this surreal, multi-part meditation on, like early American expansionism. It blends, the pastoral nostalgia with industrial type images and the voices of those who made it all possible, the slave laborers. Van Dyke Park's abstract lyrics and Brian's intricate pictorial arrangement creates this really psychedelic collage of progress, being dislocated, having to move somewhere far away, and the fractured American dream.
For those of you who are really getting a lot out of my lessons, here is how you can help me out. Make sure you are subscribed to my channel and that the notification bell is set to all notifications for my channel. You can watch more of my videos by browsing through the playlist section of my channel to find the videos that most interest you. But the very best way you can help me is to subscribe to my Patreon music school called High Castle Conservatory, and you help me in the most direct way possible. Lastly, please consider buying my original music projects I.S.S. and High Castle Orchestra on Bandcamp. You can find the details and links in the description below. Now let's get back to that lesson.
So let's talk a little bit about the instruments on this song and the type of orchestrations that Brian was doing for Smile specifically. In '67, Brian had created this pictorial style, which was kind of an expansion of the wall of sound. Pet Sounds had made it more this personal thing, and then Smile made it more actually painting a picture of something. Let me see if I can give you some examples. He used specific instruments to represent parts of the album's story. For example, like a banjo and a harmonica could suggest like the American frontier, while the chugging cellos and contrabasses would represent the dark forces of encroaching industrialization, the steam railroad engine coming down the track right towards your little home on the range, Rather than just supporting the songs, the instruments paint these really clear, vivid scenes that turn each track into like a sonic representation of the main themes of the song. I've never really seen anything like it, honestly. But let's talk about the instruments that he dialed up for this particular session. And in those days, there was you could overdub to a small degree, but for the most part, you had to gather your ensemble in the studio. So in Brian's creative mind, he ended up ordering this palette of instruments to come to the studio for the tracking session of Cabinessence. Someone to pluck the inside of the upright piano. Ding dong. It has a really interesting kind of like a railroad spike sound, very percussive. Upright bass that plays probably pizzicato and maybe bows as well. There's a banjo, Dan Electro fuzz bass, two cellos, a dobro like a slide guitar, accordion, harmonica, bass harmonica, flute, trumpet, which I think is muted most of the time here, acoustic guitar, bouzouki, the Greek stringed instrument, sarod, I forget how it's pronounced, the Indian string instrument, tambourine, metal clank, percussion, bell sound, and then the chanting Beach Boys background vocals. I think there could be a few more in there, but that's what I was able to hear and then do a little research and see who was credited or whatever. So that is a pretty bizarre instrumentation. And right away, if you're studying this from the point of view of like, what instruments should I layer my songs with? Brian was at the absolute peak of his creativity, ordering this super specific ensemble to come record for him. So in this video, I'm going to go over all this stuff, the production secrets that make the song great, the chord progressions, the relationship to keys, the instruments, and I'll try to shed some light on the abstract poetic lyrics and the themes of the song. So really quickly, check out my charts here. I've arranged this into song sections of simple A, B, C. When I have a new key here, I make it a circle with a sun in it, like here. And then you can see here as the Roman numeral, which represents what function this chord has of the key we happen to be in. Let's take the first bar, and we have E flat major 7, which would be the 1 of E flat. Let's take a minute to talk about the overall song form of this song. For as complex as this song is in certain ways, the form of the song is very simple. There's an A section, a B section, then it repeats the A section and B section, then it does this C section, and the C actually has its own little outro tag that repeats and it fades out. But that sort of A, B, C thing is really the simplest part of the song. So even though you're going to be blown away by how complex this song is, the structure couldn't be simpler. There's also these real nice pregnant pauses, between the sections that really give this sense of like tension and release, and sort of a cinematic quality to it as well, which I think the song naturally has anyway. So it only, I love when things, they didn't record the click tracks back then. He would have to teach the ensemble. There could be someone sort of directing it, a drummer or someone, but it also has to be the ensemble members have to just be able to play it. So yeah, like I said, this is a really simple song form, especially for a song that's so complex. So it starts right in with the A section. You could call it the verse, but I named the sections A, B, C, and then an outro tag. So the A section is, you've all heard it if you heard this song. If you haven't heard this song, you really should go familiarize yourself with the original 1967 Beach Boys version of Smile. And the first section is... That part has been called the Home on the Range. The lyrics even say Home on the Range, and it has this warm sort of cabin campfire feel. The song's called Cabinessence, the essence of a cabin. It's also that idea of like a piece of land, like you all, within American expansionism, it's like I could have my little piece of land. It's what they couldn't have in Europe with all the shit show that had become post Middle Ages and then through the Renaissance, and Europe was a weird place. So just like escaping from it and finding my own piece of land, regardless of the kind of horrors that it took to get that was the idea. So the song really, I think, embodies that. The instruments of this section, like we said, are pictorial. You hear a banjo that plays this pentatonic line that's like boom ba 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 da 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 da. Then there's like a dobro slide guitar. There's this little harmonica and I think accordion or melodica duo that just pauses, and it's just those two instruments. I think harmonica on top and the accordion below it, but there's a flute that comes in for a second. I think there's like some kind of acoustic guitar, but there's this very sort of simple Home on the Range feeling to it that is pretty cool. Let's listen one time to the chords of this this A section, or you could call it the verse, but I'm calling it the A section. that goes to the B section, Who Ran the Iron Horse. But anyway, that's the chords of the A section, and we'll talk about that shortly. This is a super simple bar structure. It's literally just 4, 4, 4, 4. So nothing interesting about the bar structure here. It does 4 bars and then 2 bars in a first ending, so that's 4 bars plus 4. Then it repeats and does another 4 bars and goes to the second ending, which would be, basically just 4 plus 4 plus 4 plus 4. Let's get into this chord progression here a little bit. So it is, I'm going to say we're in the key of E flat. You can hear it in the melodies. Doing, 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 doing. It's all in E flat, really clearly. Anyway, so we've got it's a little bit of a controversy because I called this E flat major 7 over G, but there wasn't a real bass note in it. It's not like I heard that, but the piano voicing or whatever's the guitar or whatever's, it had that in the bottom of it, and you can clearly hear it go from this E flat major 7 for G to E flat 7 over G right here to E flat over E flat. It's really clear to hear that. Then G minor 7 to C minor 7, then B flat over D, G7 sus 4, so it's not really clear, something very low playing that G. So if you were to sit there and just like absolutely accentuate that E flat major 7 over G, it might sound a little weird, but this is the way it sounded when I transcribed it. And I clearly heard this motion, then A flat down to E flat. So all we have there is 1 to 1 dominant. 1 dominant usually goes to 4. That's what it does, different bass note. Now 3, 6. Now we go to 5, but it does not sound like 5, right? B flat over D, because in the key of E flat, which we are, that would be E flat to B flat over D. But in this case, it really throws us for a loop, because after G minor 7 to C minor 7, we go B flat over D, then G7 sus 4, and then a C5 chord, which has hints of minor because the melodies of the harmonica and accordion are C minor pentatonic. So that's why I called it minor right there on that first ending, but really it's a C5, and the only harmonies are being made by that little duo, that pioneer duo of the accordion and the harmonica, with harmonica on top. So once again, that chord progression is 1 to 1 dominant, to 4, to 3, 6, now 5, and then this G7 sus 4 could be called like a 3 dominant, or it could be called a 5 of 6, because this C minor that we're ending up on, the 5 of that is going to be a G7. So it's kind of a weird way. If you look at it, this bass motion, D, G, C. If we're in C minor, that'd be a 2-5-1 in C minor. So a natural 2-5-1 in C minor would be D minor 7 flat 5 to G7 to C minor. So Brian, in a weird way, is really hinting at a 2-5-1 in C minor. And that doesn't mean we change keys, because guess what? C minor is the relative minor of E flat major. So it wasn't really, it's really just a secondary dominant is what you could consider it, that G7. And it's not a normal G7 either. Whenever you make something sus, you are making it about as weird as you can make it. Like it does not sound like itself whenever you do a sus. And if you don't know what that is, a major chord, you sus it, sus 4, the middle note goes up the half step. And if you have a dominant chord, it's still that middle note, that major third becomes the perfect fourth. And it has this real sort of like tense, sort of a kind of pretty sound, but a tense pretty sound. I don't know how to explain it. It's not like dissonant like this, but there's some So Brian tricks us by going B flat over D, which is really the 5 of the E flat that we're in, but he's using it, that D note, as if it was the 2, 5, 1 of C minor, right? That's C5. So that's all really just an E flat, but he does a real interesting way to get to that C5 or that C minor by going B flat over D, G7 sus4, then that harmonica accordion duo. Then it repeats. Same chords again. So you don't really need to analyze it again. 4, whoops, 3, 6, and again, B flat over D, which is like 5, but it's also like, this is almost like 2, 5. Go to the second ending, it goes, and it's interesting that the vocal melody is the only thing that really makes it be a C to C major 7 to C7. I think everything else is just hitting a C5, but it's clearly going toward that second ending. We have B flat over D. Kind of does a fermata and a real nice pregnant pause before it goes to the B section, or Who Ran the Iron Horse. It is interesting that you can do a melody that implies chords and then don't have to do that in the chords themselves. If I just say C5 right there on that second ending, you could do all of that and just understand that the vocal melody is doing that. Anyway, that should explain the chords of this A section, or the home on the range, and this real sort of pastoral, peaceful campfire type of feeling that this part evokes. There's this background vocal that says doing, and Brian was really good at making interesting background vocals. I think he got that from doo-wop. Doo-wop is always doing this wham drama lama damma ding dong whoom pa doom poop at the bump and the bump bump bump. There's always interesting syllables happening in doo-wop, and Brian grew up listening to that. So it says doing. And that could be spelled, people have theorized that it's spelled like doing, like we're doing something. And in this case, they were like building the railroad or whatever. But it also could just be an interesting sound. But behind that A section is this background vocal that's just one part, but it just goes doing, 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 doing. I don't know. To me, it's almost funny. Like, it doesn't make the part a parody or a comedy or too whimsical, but a little bit on the whimsical side for sure. It doesn't make it pure novelty, is what I should say. So it holds its integrity, but there's this pretty freaking funny background vocal part right away. Doing, 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 doing. There's also that banjo part, which I already mentioned before. So that's the banjo part. Then there's this little string thing that does this little descending simple line. It's like, really simple, and you put that together, it really is more complicated than it sounds, because it has this very simple campfire in the cabin feeling. Whatever other instruments are in there, that sliding dobro guitar, I can't really approximate what it's doing. There's a flute that comes in just at the end of the first vocal part, and it mimics the lead vocal for a second. I'll show you where the flute comes in here. Oops. Here comes the flute on that B flat over D. that little duet of the harmonica and the accordion is so brilliant. Because everything kind of pauses at that C5 chord, which is clearly hinting at minor, but on that first ending, but it has just that break. I don't know. Brian did an absolutely amazing job with the vibe of the instruments and which instruments he decides are playing in which parts. I think he did it perhaps better than anyone, as evidenced by this. We'll get more into the lyrics later, but this Home on the Range section really evokes this sort of 19th century pioneer type feel. It's got romanticism, the open sky, the American West, your little piece of land. The instruments, like I said, really have that dreamlike. They evoke that serenity of that prairie or that home on the range. The lyrics are super poetic and even cryptic, really. Light the lamp and fire mellow, Cabinessence, timely hello, welcome's a time for a change. Lost and found, you still remain there, and find a meadow filled with grain there. I'll give you a home on the range. But the themes dealt with just in that first A section, the home on the range section, you've got the nostalgia, but also that isolation, right? Because you kind of went way out west to get your little piece of land. That mythical promise of, the American dream and all the good and bad things that go along with that. So a lot going on here, and we'll get more into the lyrics later in the video. I want to keep going with the music theory and the chords part of it as we head to the next section. Next section could be called Who Ran the Iron Horse, and it's really hard to approximate with piano and one voice, but it's something like, who ran the iron horse? 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 Who ran the iron? And so on and so forth. But let me talk about just for a second how it gets from part A to part B. So if I were to have to go back to the second ending, you get this. I'll give you a home on the... And at that second ending, it actually switches keys to F by climbing down from C, which is that kind of minor, right? C was the minor of E flat major, the relative minor, but instead it resolves on the second ending to it doesn't hint at the major other than this. That's C7 that's hinted at right there. So it's really switching kind of suddenly to the key of F. And even it hints at C major because I'll give you a home on the... Right there, that's C major for a second. The range. But now it's going to... switches to the key of F because C7 is 5 of F. And then the B section starts in F. Who ran the iron horse? And goes into this waltzy blues train track nightmare thing. But yeah, you could call this section Who Ran the Iron Horse. It sounds like a roaring train, steaming down the tracks, and it just keeps asking with this chant, who ran the iron horse? So this section contains this more sort of rapturous combination of tambourine, fuzz bass, cellos grinding away, this plucked piano that sounds really kind of like a railroad spike or something like that, chugging contrabass, backing vocals that are doing the chants and the other higher soprano parts. Biographer John Stebbins said that the demonic chanting exemplified some of the most haunting, manic, evil-sounding music the Beach Boys have ever made. Percussion was arranged to evoke the sound of workers assembling the train tracks. Another contributor to a magazine, Thomas Britt, noted that the song contains silences that separate the separate movements of the song, allowing the listener to temporarily reset expectations for the next section. So the crazy thing about this Who Ran the Iron Horse, and let me play this whole section for you because it comes out of I'll give you a home on the range. Who ran the iron horse? Who ran the iron horse? Who ran the iron horse? section. I watch you. So to me, one of the most remarkable thing is that he was able to achieve this chugging sound of a railroad, steam railroad, without drums, really. There's a tambourine I hear in there, and there's this piano plucking. He's plucking inside the piano that sounds real percussive. And then the electric fuzz bass kind of morphs in these certain notes. It really almost sounds like it's letting off, blowing off the steam. But yeah, what a unbelievably psychedelic and pictorial, and it does have a menacing sort of slightly evil type of you'll come to see later this represents industrialization, so the skepticism, they are not just painting the rosy American dream in this narrative whatsoever, and I think they're really handling that part of it well. So the chords are really a basic blues. So this part is kind of, Brian called it a waltz. You could count it like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 2, 3, and 6 is really just 3, right? So waltzes are 3, 1, 2, 3. So you could call that in 3. I actually hear 6 in there because it's like 1, 2, 3, the iron 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. It's like the bars seem to be paired in 2 sets of 3s that make the phrase, I guess. But Brian called it a waltz, and I can respect that. And the funniest thing about this is just like a blues form. If you're like if you're in the key of F and you go to 4, which is B flat 7, that's all this is. But it sounds so crazy. And the bass does a scale you could call Lydian dominant. Lydian dominant is this. So you take like an F major scale, and then you sharp the 4. So the cellos are chugging away at this part that's like, and you can see it's doing that Lydian dominant, and at the end it does a little chromatic walk up to the 1. So listen to this: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Does it like 4 times. So the way that sounds all together is 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 1, 2. Then it goes up to B flat. Does the same thing for last time. Same amount of time, sorry. Then F7 twice. And another pause. Back to another A section. I wanna watch you in palm facing. So yeah, that Lydian dominant is really one of the most menacing parts of it. But you also get the feeling that there's this kind of chuggy thing. So the cellos seem to be doing that Lydian dominant. But there's also something below it, like maybe contrabasses or a low piano. I don't know what exactly is doing that. So the interesting thing about this is Brian is combining some chaotic elements when he adds the chant. So the basic part of the chant, you've heard me say it, is who ran the iron horse, who ran. And the other vocal I hear is this high soprano that I can't sing super well. That's like Brian at his peak, but it's like. And check this out, it's not Lydian dominant. That's that chaotic. So down here, bass gets away with murder. You don't have to have the bass be this in the same mode as the melody is. So it's like. Wow. It doesn't go together like harmonies. It doesn't even make sense. They're like 2 separate worlds. It's like he wrote those parts totally differently. And this part just a simple. So it goes up to B flat. I can't sing it up this high. I'm gonna have to go to. So it's really interesting that that the upper scale is doing just a straight Lydian from the 3, and the bass is doing Lydian dominant. So that really adds to the menacing sounds of this part. There may be a few other vocal parts in that Iron Horse part. It's really hard to hear anything except "Who ran the Iron Horse?" and gosh, that's hard to sing. So this is almost like a modified blues form, right? And then you eventually go up to the 4, just like blues. Also sounds very similar to the intro of Do You Like Worms or Roll Plymouth Rock or whatever you want to call it. Off Smile. F7, B flat, maybe not 7 that time, but like a lot of themes and keys in Smile seem to be related, and that to me jumps out. So blues form can be endlessly modified. In this case, he modified it by doing it in a waltz or a 6/4 time or a 3/4 time. And the form is a little bit of 4 bars of F7, 4 bars of B flat 7, and 2 bars of F7 with that fermata at the end. So that's a little bit of an interesting form. Then it goes back to another A section with a different set of lyrics. As far as just the general lyrical theme, and I said we'll get more into the lyrics later, but Who Ran the Iron Horse as a chant, it shifts into the age of the railroad very quickly after that Home on the Range feeling. It really is like a jarring juxtaposition, really. It symbolizes expansion, industrialization, progress, but with some ambiguity and the menacing, this can't all be good type of thing going on. The phrase Iron Horse was, of course, the 19th century term for trains, suggesting both awe and fear of that sort of mechanical, iron horse thing to be intimidated of. The music becomes more driving, percussive, with some complex rhythms and layered vocals in 3/4 or 6/4. The themes of that part are the intrusion of technology into the natural world and its alienating effects for the most part. So a real stark contrast to that nice warm campfire feeling of the first A section to this B section and this railroad chugging down the train, threatening to engulf everything. So like I said, there's just a simple repeat. It does the A section, Home on the Range, B, Who Ran the Iron Horse, and then it repeats A, B before going to C. At the end of the second B section, or the Who Ran the Iron Horse section, there is a chant, really subtle in the lyrics. They say that Dennis Wilson possibly recorded it, that adds some really cool things with the lyrics, but we will go over that later in the lyrics section. It doesn't change much musically. So simple song form so far, and take note how complex some of these things are. The chords, the themes, there's layers of complexity. Like there's certain things in your song you might want complex, and then certain things you want simple. So in this song, I doubt he had to think about it. Like I always say, Brian's writing seemed to be really intuitive. He wasn't like, we need something complex and simple. Like he didn't have to think of it like, I'm being a dork and doing right now, but I still think there's some benefit to studying that way. Some people complain, they're like, there's no way he was thinking that. I know, I get it. He did it intuitively. So we have the A section, the Home on the Range, and then the B section, Who Ran the Iron Horse, and then it repeats the A section again, Home on the Range, B section, Who Ran the Iron Horse, and again a nice pause like there are between all the sections, and this C section, which you could call the Grand Coulee Dam or something to that effect. There's this cool chant that said, have you seen the Grand Coulee working on the railroad? And it kind of keeps changing all these keys and has all this like a canon type of chorale repeating each other, echoing each other effect. Over and over, the crow cries uncover the cornfield. Over and over, the thresh and they hover the wheat field. This section seems to incorporate some kind of like sarod-like string instrument, according to journalist Nick Kent. This song incorporates unique Western and Eastern instruments kind of chaotically juxtaposed over each other, sometimes not even relating in terms of key and mode, which only adds to the tension, honestly. The song seems to juxtapose both the highly advanced Western and Eastern musical references with a sort of Oriental presence, and that's the Chinese slave laborers that built that transcontinental railroad. Beach Boy member Al Jardine remembered there was a lot of challenging vocal exercises and movements in that song, but he enjoyed the challenges. So yeah, this is a strange song. So it comes out of the iron horn. Who ran the iron horse? And it does this thing. It's like, have you seen the Grand Coulee? Have you seen the Grand Coulee? Have you seen the Grand Coulee working on the railroad? Over and over, the crow cries uncover the cornfield. So yeah, this part, take a good listen to it, because the instruments you're going to hear in this part are a real wild mix of that sarod string instrument. The harmonica comes back in there, a muted trumpet, fuzz bass has that similar effect. The metal clank percussion, which sounds like it's supposed to represent the Chinese slave labor pounding the spike into the railroad track. There's a cello comes back in, contrabass, bouzouki. There seems to be a banjo line in there. The banjo line is really simple. So anyway, the outro, or the C section, is the part that goes, have you seen the Grand Coulee? Have you seen the Grand Coulee? So it's echoing. It keeps echoing the line, and I don't see it as being in one key. I think it just takes a C minor and moves it to F minor, right? Then moves it to B flat minor, before finally ending up back in the key of F and doing this really weird 2-5 over the whole thing. G minor 11, and 11 just means you're adding like a sus note into it, the perfect fourth. So a lot of voicings you could do for 11. It's a chord that Brian didn't do that often. Steely Dan would do that one a lot, and there's a lot of them, a lot of ways to voice it, but so it's really doing this like 2-5 in F, but he's doing like the banjo lines, like, and then there's these Eastern instruments that are totally ignoring that banjo line, doing this mode, and the Eastern instruments are doing the more Eastern mode, which at the same time, and I think that's a really cool idea if you wanted this sort of clash of cultures. And there's a lot going on there thematically, where it's from the perspective of that Chinese slave laborer. He's looking up at the sky, seeing the crow cry, and seeing the beauty of the Western, expanse there. So the chords in that C section are just C5, even though it's implying C minor because it's about to go to C minor. So you do a C5, then C minor over B flat. So it's like that C minor falls, right? But then it goes to F5 to F minor. So I'm saying we're changing keys to F minor. Then it changes keys to B flat minor. And then finally, working on the railroad, to this big 2-5, over and over, across the cornfield. Almost reminds me of Wahalalule, Wahalalula, Kiniwakapula. Like I said, that's part of Smile too on a different song. But yeah, this song is a very strange clash of things. It's a very haunting part. The chant is eerie. Have you seen the Grand Coulee? Have you seen the Grand Coulee? Have you seen the Grand Coulee working on the railroad? They keep asking, have you seen them? Have you seen them? It references the Grand Coulee Dam, that big dam, and indirectly points to the thousands of laborers who were exploited to build that transcontinental railroad. The vocals are chanted in a choral style like a field holler or a spiritual echoing through the industrial clatter. The themes in this part are dehumanization, exploitation, and the erasure of immigrant contributions. The lyrics of that part after the "Have you seen the Grand Coulee working on the railroad?" There's that little outro, or the thing I call the tag, which just repeats and fades. So it's kind of part of the C section, but it's also kind of part of just a little separate tag. Over and over, the crow cries, "Uncover the cornfield." That's a very strange lyric. Over and over, the thresher and hover the wheat field. So there's like mechanical, agricultural things, as well as just the crow crying and the Chinese labor hitting that spike into the ground and seeing that crow crying. What's under that cornfield? Uncover the cornfield. Is that where the American Indians used to live? Like, you can't really tell with Van Dyke Park's lyrics exactly what's going on, and I absolutely love that about them. That's why they're poetry. But yeah, what's under that cornfield? There's something unsettling about even this home on the range thing, because it's like the land belonged to someone else. I get it. All of history is like that everywhere, so I'm not going to get too into all that, because that's the story of the world. But it's a really, but this part is a really enigmatic refrain. It evokes that cyclical labor in nature, the crow crying, it's the harvesting machinery, the hidden truths, and the layers of the agricultural metaphor. And it actually has that vocal chant from the Iron Horse part. Gosh, my voice sounds really fried right now. But I was never good at those like smooth scale lines in falsetto. That is really quite an exercise. So it repurposes the soprano vocal part of the "Who ran the" and puts it in this. There is so much going on. It is really pretty crazy. So let's just talk about all the keys that we go through. We go from the key of E flat, the beginning of the song, to by the second ending, we get to the key of F. And then we go back to the key of E flat for A again. Then back to the key of F at the second ending. And then we go through some key changes, like in the C section, C minor, and then to the key of F minor, then to the key of B flat minor, and finally to F. But it's F, it's a little bit of a different F than we'd experienced on the Iron Horse sections, but F seems to be central, and it is central to Smile. Do You Like Worms or Roll Plymouth Rock seems to be a start on an F. There's a lot going on with F. So I want to talk about the lyrics and the theme, multiple themes that kind of tie this song together and fit into the larger Smile concept of an album. This song really deconstructs the myth of America as a land of opportunity by showing the costs of its expansion, basically cultural erasure, environmental damage, human exploitation. It's a real impressionistic mural, not really like a documentary or something that's super obvious, but it's more about mood and symbol than it is about some kind of clear narrative. And I like that in music. I like the mind to have to paint that picture. So really, if you're a songwriter, looking at what they did here and made all of these ideas abstract really helps leave some spaces for you to fill in your own interpretations. The song definitely has the idea of spiritual dislocation. Despite referencing home and Cabinessence and home on the range, there's a lonely, sort of hollow tone to this song. The essence of a cabin, it's a symbol of safety and self-reliance. It's now something gone or inaccessible. The past is unreachable. Its myths have been shattered by progress. There is a big theme in this song of technological dissonance and how that fits into human society. There's trains and dams, and the expansion in this song appears not really as like a triumph or something great, but as like an overwhelming and impersonal brute force. The Iron Horse and the Grand Coulee Dam are massive non-human presences. They're indifferent to the people they displace or enslave or whatever. The harmonies kind of turn even a bit mechanical at times, unsettling, like we talked about. The song structure is fragmented and definitely nonlinear. It shifts between time periods and perspectives. It reflects a fractured sort of national psyche, a loss of cohesive narrative. It really mirrors the turmoil of that Vietnam era and the counterculture's search for meaning in a certain way. So yeah, this song is put together more like a collage, and I think that's so interesting, of America's, lost innocence. And lost innocence was a theme that always came back with Brian. And his earlier songs, it was like, oh, the girl cut her hair or something, or she's not the sweet girl she used to be. But in this case, it's like America's collective lost innocence. So this one really hits harder on Smile. But it's a very familiar theme throughout Brian's songs all the way back. The Cabinessence is not really just a song. It's a psychedelic panorama of America. It's viewed through the lens of Brian Wilson's genius, songs and music and orchestration, and Van Dyke Park's, surreal literary type of vibe. Juxtaposes beauty with brutality, progress with loss, nostalgia, with alienation. Each movement reveals like a new facet of the nation built on myth, machine, memory. Van Dyke's lyrics on Smile and Cabinessence are really unlike anything in pop or rock music history. They're like this abstract, surreal tapestry that fuses Americana, industrial images, fragmented poetics. It really pushes aside that a narrative of clarity, and instead crafts a lyric that's like a landscape that feels more like modern poetry than it does pop music. It evokes all the myths and contradictions of American expansion, some sort of cryptic beauty. In that realm, though, of popular music, there's truly nothing else like it. It's baffling, it's profound, it's kind of funny, and there's puns sometimes. It's like a weird dream of the American historical psyche. Yeah, apparently Mike Love was not too happy with the lyrics, and Van Dyke, when asked by Mike what they mean, didn't seem to want to explain them. I think he might have said, I don't have any idea what they mean, or something like that, and that probably only made Mike more mad. But I really don't think Van Dyke wanted to explain abstract poetry to Mike Love. That might not really have been his thing, so it was kind of a tedious task he didn't really want to be a part of, which is unfortunate, but... So let's get into the specific lyrics here, just to give a little summary here. This song, Cabinessence, really fuses that American frontier and imagery associated with it with, like industrial age questions and a sort of abstract, surreal poetry. When you put Van Dyke's lyrics and Brian's complex music together, it really creates a dreamlike quality. The journeys through the past. It blurs the lines between nostalgia and critique. It's about the cost and spirit of progress, viewed through the eyes of both wonder and sorrow. And it does take multiple perspectives, the pioneer and their home on the range, but the slave laborer, and then the industrial railroad type of stuff. So real quickly, we'll go through the lyrics and just kind of see what the basic vibe of them is, and then we'll wrap it up. So that first... light the lamp and fire mellow. The A section, the home on the range, it says light the lamp and fire mellow. That's really like a cozy, rustic scene, kindling the fireplace in a cabin, evoking that pioneer life and the warmth and comfort of the cabin. So light the lamp and fire mellow. Cabinessence timely hello. It's really a poetic greeting of the cabin, the spirit of the cabin, welcoming, a change or a new beginning, a new time. Maybe they settled down to their land, and it's a new time for the natives who may have lived there before that too, in a different way. So it's hard to tell exactly what they're getting at there, which is great. Welcome's a time for a change, that moment of a transition, hinting at, themes of progress or shifting seasons, Then it goes, lost and found, you still remain there, and find a meadow filled with grain there. Lost and found, you still remain Then it says, lost and found, you still remain there, and find a meadow filled with grain there. So lost and found, that could be, all the struggles they've had of going west, of striking out on your own and just roughing it, which, we might idealize that cabin life, but it couldn't have been easy surviving, really. So resilience, something lost has been rediscovered, and yet you remain steadfast in your determination to make this work. You'll find a meadow filled with grain there, it says. That's a picture of abundance or fertility, nourishment. You'll find something you can use to sustain yourself. I'll give you a home on the range. So the comfort of that, belonging in the wide open frontier, connecting life with landscape, all kinds of things. But that's that first section. Then it says, who ran the iron horse? And that obviously refers to a steam locomotive, which is what they called it. The question raises uncertainty about who drives or controls industrial progress, really. It's an interesting question. Who ran the iron horse? Who did run that iron horse? Where does this stuff come from? Because now that we're living in this like AI practically knowing every thought we have, we kind of see what the end game, at least I think I do, you can call me crazy, but like we see what the end game of technology is, and it's not going in a good direction. And even in a more innocent phase of the technology, Brian and Van Dyke, in the 60s, they didn't have all the phones, or they had some gadgets and stuff like that. They had some progress in that direction, cars and TVs and things like that. But nothing like what we have now could almost not have been predicted, except but some pulp sci-fi book from the 60s, some kind of Philip K. Dick thing. But so in a way, this chant, who ran the iron horse, it could be asking, who operated the trains and that physically connected, these huge parts, vast parts of the land, opening that frontier up and fueling industrial growth, not to mention, what that train track did to the buffalo migration pattern and how that negatively impacted the Native Americans. There's so much here that they only really allude to. We have the workers behind the scenes, the engineers, the laborers, the slave laborers that built the railroad. Everything. It's all sort of in here in a very abstract way. But who ran the iron horse? Power and control. It questions who controls those forces. Was it the laborers, the railroad tycoons, government interests, faceless industrial capitalists? Could be a big group of people there. What is the cause and consequence of that expansion? The iron horse symbolizes not really just like the technology, but also that mechanization of society and the transformation of that entire American landscape. It raises certain questions about who benefits and who pays the price, and is it worth it, and things like that. Then there's like the myth versus the actual reality. It really is a challenge to the romanticized image of manifest destiny and westward expansion and progress, quote unquote. The song hints at the complexities and that the exploitation and the human cost behind the narrative. The slave laborers, the Native Americans. I keep mentioning those things, but the repeated question of who ran the iron horse suggests uncertainty or critique about agency and accountability, really, in the march of progress. Who holds the power? Who drives history forward? And who gets left behind? Yeah, the who ran the iron horse in the context of this song, Cabinessence, it ties that pastoral, nostalgic imagery to the harsh realities of, an industrializing nation. It highlights the song with this sort of haunting, unresolved question, urging the listeners to reflect on the human stories and the power dynamics beneath the surface of the American dream. By repeating it like a chant, it gains a sort of ritualistic, almost accusatory tone, reinforcing that tension between idealism and reality. Then it goes back to the home on the range part, A2 or whatever. The lyrics say, I want to watch you wind-blown facing, waves of wheat for your embracing, folks sing a song of the Grange. So back to this romantic scene, standing in those fields, free, connected to nature's elements, really. It alludes to a rural community, folks sing a song of the Grange. Grange gatherings often celebrated farming life and solidarity and things like that. Then the lyrics say, nestle in a kiss below there, the constellations ebb and flow there, and witness our home on the range. It's that intimacy, tenderness, beneath those big prairie skies, the melding of personal and a cosmic scale, really, set within that frontier range. But yeah, really interesting lyrics. So finally it gets to that, or not finally, but so it gets to that B section again, who ran the iron horse, and it's exactly the same except there's this chant that's going on subtly in the background. Truck driving man, do what you can, hightail your load off the road, out of the nightlife. It's a gas man, I don't believe I gotta grieve. In and out of luck with a buck in a booth, catching on to the truth in the vast past, the last gasp, in the land in the dust, trust that you must, catch as catch can. That's a tough section, man. Wow. The spoken word interlude here in the second B section, it's not really easy to hear, but it really has a portrait of like a hard manual labor worker out on the road, hustling, living rough, adding that gritty real world texture. It says, truck driving man, do what you can, hightail your load off the road. This sort of represents I think the relentless hustle of the working man, trying to keep moving, carrying heavy burdens, real literal burdens and figurative. The phrase do what you can reflects determination, but also the limits imposed by circumstance. Then it says, out of the nightlife, it's a gas, man. The fleeting moments of escape or enjoyment amid a tough, often lonely life on the road. The nightlife could be the literal nighttime driving and the social scenes missed or briefly touched, or it could be those truck stop orgies. Who knows what the hell they're talking about there, but geez. The lyrics say, I don't believe I gotta grieve. That's more resilience and refusing to be weighed down by sorrow or loss despite hardships. Losing kids, it's hard stuff, man. Our ancestors went through some crazy shit. In and out of luck with a buck in a booth, catching on to the truth. It's kind of the gamble of life. Sometimes you win, sometimes you don't. The buck in a booth is suggestive of that transaction of labor for money, or often the minimal or labor you can find, and it's a bit of a precarious thing, that pursuit of making a basic living, right? Catching on to the truth hints at an awakening to the realities behind that idealized dream. In the vast past, the last gasp, in the land and the dust, trust that you must. So that sort of talks about the connection to history and heritage, the vast past, but also the struggle for survival, the last gasp. The dusty land symbolizes that the opportunity and the harshness, and trust that you must reflects the, I'd say, the necessity of faith or hope amid all that uncertainty. Catch as catch can. That's an idiom that's used to mean whatever you can find or manage, implying survival type of mentality and the unpredictability of living life, on the edges of things. So on the C section, have you seen the Grand Coulee working on the railroad? Over and over the crow cries, uncover the cornfield. That chant captures the double-edged sword of the American dream. On the one hand, it embodies perseverance, grit, and the belief in working hard to make a living. Those are sort of classic American values. But on the other hand, it reveals the grind, the loneliness, and precariousness that come with chasing that dream, especially for working class people. It acknowledges that success is completely uncertain, in and out of luck, and often requires enduring hardship with little reward. This chant acts as a counterpoint to the pastoral idealism, that's in the rest of Cabinessence, or at least in those A sections. And it really grounds the album's vision and story, or narrative, to the real struggles behind America's mythical frontier spirit or whatever. It's raw, it's honest. It really gives us a glimpse at the cost of progress and the human resilience that keep those dreams alive despite everything. So the last section, the C section and the tag outro. Have you seen the Grand Coulee working on the railroad? Over and over the crow cries, uncover the cornfield. Over and over the thresher and hover the wheat field. This part references the man-made Grand Coulee Dam and the Chinese laborers who built that transcontinental railroad, the industrial might and the immigrant toil into the narrative of the song, really kind of out of nowhere. A, B, and then this C section. Over and over, the crow cries uncover the cornfield. Over and over, the thresher and hover the wheat field. This enigmatic refrain really evokes the cyclical nature of labor, the harvest machinery, hidden truths, under the cover of under the cornfield. When you uncover it, what do you find? Is it the Native American burial ground? And you hear the spike of this pounding. So it's like the laborers hitting the spike and looking up and hearing the crow cry, and so that cry is somehow uncovering the cornfield. Yeah, this is really wild. But overall, Cabinessence is really amazing in the way it blends these different sections and makes a collage of them and makes it into this psychedelic. It's not really anything like pop music. I don't know what you would call it, but man, I think this is Brian Wilson at the absolute peak of his genius. Thanks for watching, and stay tuned for more.
Thanks a lot for watching this video and taking an interest in my channel. Please help me reach a larger audience by hitting subscribe below and ringing the notification bell. Check out my video playlist page to find the categories that most interest you. Leave me a super thanks here on YouTube, and even better, come join my Patreon. Please consider buying music for my original projects I.S.S. and High Castle Teleorchestra. Also, don't forget to sign up for my email list on the front page of timsmolens.com. You can find information about all of those things in the description below. Thanks again.